My name is Margaret, and I am 55 years old. I am not a famous woman, not a business tycoon, nor a celebrity who people know by face or name. I am simply a mother, ordinary in the eyes of the world, but extraordinary in the battles I've fought. If there is anything remarkable about me, it is not my wealth or my education, but the sacrifices I have carried in silence. My story is not about glamour, it is about survival. And today, I want to tell you how I carried the weight of 3 children on my shoulders when the man I trusted most abandoned me. I was only 26 when my husband walked out of my life. We had been married for just 5 years. We had built dreams together, whispered plans late at night, and held each other as though the future was ours to shape. But one morning, he looked me in the eye and without much explanation, he left. No goodbyes, no apologies, just silence. He walked away, leaving me with 3 little children clinging to my dress and crying for their father. That night, I sat in the dark with nothing but fear in my chest. I remember feeding my children with pieces of bread so small they looked like crumbs, while my own stomach twisted in hunger. I could have cried endlessly, cursed my fate, or broken down, but instead, I wiped my tears and made a vow to myself. I will not let my children suffer. I will not let them feel abandoned. If I must starve, let it be me, but my children will live. The very next day, I began my new life. I left behind my unfinished college degree and stepped into the world of work, a world that had no sympathy for women like me. I became a worker in a local factory, standing for hours, my back aching, my fingers swollen. When that wasn't enough, I washed dishes in a small restaurant at night. Sometimes, when bills piled up, I worked as a cleaner in people's homes. The winters were cruel. My hands cracked from the cold water as I scrubbed floors. I walked long distances because bus fare was too expensive. At times, I wore the same torn coat for years, patching it again and again. But when my children came home from school and smiled at me, I forgot all the pain. Their smiles were my only luxury. I gave up many things. I gave up the idea of new clothes for myself. I gave up warm meals, often drinking water at night to fill my stomach so my children could eat more. I gave up laughter because I was too tired to find joy. But in my heart, I held on to one dream, that my children would never feel the emptiness I felt. Every morning, before the sun rose, I was already awake. I cooked their lunches, ironed their uniforms, and whispered prayers over their heads. They didn't always understand. Sometimes they cried and complained, asking why their friends had toys and outings, while they had to settle for the basics. I didn't scold them. I simply kissed their foreheads and reminded myself that children don't yet understand the cost of sacrifice. The neighborhood women often looked at me with pity. "Margaret," they said, "you're too fragile to carry this burden. You'll break one day." And I always replied with a faint smile, "A mother does not break. A mother bends, she stretches, but she does not break." As my children grew older, the struggle only intensified. My eldest entered high school, and with that came bigger fees, more books, more expenses. I took on another job, cleaning an office building in the mornings before heading to the factory. At night, when the house was quiet, I sat at my sewing machine, stitching clothes for neighbors to earn a few extra dollars. The sound of the sewing machine became the rhythm of my nights. My fingers pricked by needles, my back hunched, my eyes burning with fatigue. But when my eldest son brought home a report card filled with A's, my exhaustion melted. When teachers praised him for being smart, I felt my chest swell with pride. I lived for those moments. Those small victories kept me alive. I taught my children values I hoped they would never forget. I told them, life will never be kind, but hard work will always open doors. Don't ever beg, don't ever give up. If you want a future, earn it with your sweat. Sometimes I feared I was too strict. I pushed them harder than I pushed myself. But deep inside, I wanted them to rise higher than the walls that trapped me. There were nights when loneliness nearly drowned me. When the children slept, I would sit alone, staring at the empty chair at the dining table where my husband once sat. I would wonder if he ever thought of us. Did he miss the children? Did he regret walking away? I never had those answers. All I had was the cold silence of an abandoned woman. But even in those moments of despair, I reminded myself, I am not just a wife who was left behind. I am a mother, and my children need me more than ever. Slowly the years passed. My children grew taller, smarter, more independent. They no longer needed me to tie their shoes or hold their hands while crossing the street. Instead, they needed books, fees, guidance, and discipline. And I gave them everything. I was not perfect. I made mistakes. Sometimes I raised my voice when stress consumed me. Sometimes I failed to hide my tears. But my love never wavered. Everything I did, every shift, every sacrifice, every scar was for them. Looking back now, I wonder how I survived those years. The hunger, the exhaustion, the humiliation of being seen as a single mother who was left behind. People whispered, they gossiped, they judged, but they did not see the strength it took to keep going. If I had given up, who would have raised my children? Who would have carried them to where they are now? I carried not just them, but the weight of their dreams on my shoulders. This is my story. This is who I am. Margaret, the abandoned wife, the forgotten mother, but also the woman who never stopped fighting. And this is only the beginning. When I look back now, I realize that the years of my children's growing up were also the years of my own silent aging. Their use was being built on the stones of my sacrifice, while my own strength slowly drained away. By the time my eldest son Daniel entered college, I was already carrying more than one lifetime's worth of burdens. My daughters, Emma and Grace, were following close behind in school. Their tuition, uniforms, books, and endless needs swallowed every dollar I earned. Yet I never allowed them to see the full extent of my struggle. I wanted them to believe, even for a moment, that they were just like every other child. I didn't want them to feel like the poor kids, the ones with no father, the ones with a mother who worked herself to death. The days blurred together, work, exhaustion, and responsibility. In the mornings, I scrubbed the offices, inhaling the sharp sting of cleaning chemicals. By midday, I was in the factory, standing at my station until my legs throbbed. And at night, the sewing machine hummed, filling the house with the steady sound of sacrifice. Sometimes my hands shook so badly that I could barely thread the needle. My back ached constantly. But I told myself, hold on just a little longer, just until they finish their studies, just until they stand on their own feet. Despite everything, I carried pride inside me. When Daniel walked across the stage at his high school graduation wearing his cap and gown, I clapped until my palms burned. My heart felt as though it might burst. In that moment, every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, every hunger pain, it all became worth it. He hugged me afterward, smiling wide, and said, Mom, I couldn't have done this without you. Tears rolled down my cheeks. That one sentence gave me more strength than food ever could. Emma was different. She was quiet, thoughtful, always with her nose buried in books. She dreamed of becoming a teacher, and I promised her I would support that dream, no matter what it cost me. Grace, my youngest, was fiery and full of energy. She wanted to be a nurse to help people, and I knew she had the heart for it. Each of them carried pieces of me, the resilience, the determination, and, I hoped, the love for family. But as they grew older, a distance slowly crept in. It wasn't intentional at first. They became busy with school, friends, and later with jobs. Their worlds expanded while mine remained the same: work, bills, and sacrifice. I watched them laugh with others while I waited at home, stitching clothes by the dim light of a single lamp. At family dinners, they sometimes spoke of dreams that felt so far from my reach: traveling, careers, lives filled with freedom. I listened quietly, smiling, but deep down, I wondered, would they ever understand what it took to give them that freedom? I remember one particular evening. I had worked a double shift at the factory and could barely keep my eyes open. But Emma had a big exam the next morning, and she asked me to quiz her on her notes. My head pounded, my eyelids heavy, but I sat with her until midnight, asking questions and encouraging her. When she passed that exam with the highest score in her class, she rushed home to tell me, "Mom, I did it," she said, hugging me tight, and once again the exhaustion melted away. These were the moments that fueled me, their victories, their progress, their small pieces of happiness. Still, loneliness was my shadow. I rarely spoke of it, but inside, I longed for companionship, for someone to share the burdens with. Yet I never remarried. My children were my life, and I refused to risk bringing another man into our fragile world. My love was for them, my time was for them, my life was for them. But sometimes late at night, when the sewing machine fell silent and the house was dark, I allowed myself to cry. Not out of weakness, but out of the weight I carried alone. Years passed quickly. Daniel graduated college, and I was so proud I thought my heart might explode again. Emma and Grace soon followed, building their own careers, stepping into adulthood. I told myself, this is it. This is the moment I have been waiting for. Soon they will stand on their own feet, and maybe I can finally rest. But life doesn't always reward sacrifices the way we expect. As they moved into adulthood, their lives became busier. Work consumed them, friends surrounded them, and eventually, marriage entered the picture. At first I was happy. I dreamed of being the mother who would be welcomed into their new homes, who would sit at the dinner table with grandchildren, who would finally taste the joy of family returning to her. But what I didn't know was that this new chapter would bring me the deepest pain of all. Slowly, phone calls became less frequent. Visits grew shorter. Promises of, "I'll come by this weekend," turned into silence. When I asked if they were free to see me, they often said, "Mom, I'm too busy," or "next time." I promise. The children I had given everything to, the children I starved myself for, worked myself to the bone for, were slipping away from me. And I was left once again with the same silence I had faced years ago when my husband walked out. This is where my second chapter truly begins. The painful realization that sometimes, even after giving your entire life, you are left forgotten. But I did not know then just how deep that pain would cut. When my children were young, I used to dream of the day they would stand on their own feet. I thought of it as the finish line to my endless race, a reward for the sacrifices I made. I imagined myself sitting in their homes, surrounded by laughter, holding grandchildren in my arms. I thought my days of loneliness would end, replaced by warmth and belonging. But dreams rarely unfold the way we picture them. Daniel was the first to get married. I remember standing at his wedding, wearing a dress I had saved for months to buy. My heart swelled with pride as I watched him exchange vows, his eyes glowing with love for his bride. People congratulated me, saying, "Margaret, you've done a wonderful job. Look at your son." I smiled, but inside a shadow of fear stirred. Would this new life pull him away from me? Would I still have a place in his world? At first things seemed fine. He would call occasionally, bring his wife over for short visits. But soon the visits stopped. The calls grew fewer. When I tried to reach him, he often said, "Mom, I'm busy with work." You know how it is, I knew. I had always known what it meant to be busy. But I also knew that no matter how tired I was, I had never been too busy for them. Emma followed next. She married a man from another city, and I could feel the distance before she even left. On her wedding day, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Mom, don't worry. I'll always be there for you." But always didn't last long. Months passed without a visit. Phone calls became rushed conversations, her voice distracted, her words distant. Whenever I asked when she might come see me, she said, "Soon, Mom, I promise." Promises. I had built my life on keeping them. But my children, they built theirs on forgetting them. Grace, my youngest, was the last to leave. She had once been the closest to me, fiery and affectionate, always swearing that she would never let me feel alone. But after her marriage, even she drifted. Her husband's family became her priority. She called less, visited less, until eventually weeks would pass in silence. I told myself not to complain. I told myself they have their own lives now. This is natural. But every night, when I sat in the quiet house, staring at the empty chairs around my dining table, The silence screamed louder than any excuse they gave me. I tried to stay patient. I told myself they would come back when they had time. I cooked their favorite meals on weekends, hoping they might show up. I kept the house tidy, their rooms ready, as if they would walk in any moment, but the doors remained closed. The food grew cold. The rooms gathered dust. Sometimes I walked to the window and watched other families on my street. Grandchildren running into the arms of their grandparents, families gathering for Sunday dinners, laughter spilling into the night. I wondered if those mothers had sacrificed as much as I had. Did they know how blessed they were to be remembered? One winter evening, I decided to visit Daniel unannounced. I baked a small cake, the kind he loved as a child, and carried it in a box. My heart was light with hope, imagining his surprise. When I arrived, his wife opened the door. Her smile was polite but cold. Daniel appeared behind her, his face tight. "Mom, you should have called first," he said. I froze, holding the cake in my hands. "I just wanted to see you," I whispered. He sighed. "We're busy tonight. Maybe another time." He didn't even invite me inside. I turned back into the night, the cake growing heavy in my arms, my chest heavier still. I walked home in the cold, tears stinging my face, and realized for the first time that my place in his life had shrunk to the size of a forgotten memory. It wasn't just Daniel. The same thing happened with Emma, then Grace. I was welcomed with politeness, but never with warmth. Conversations were short, glances impatient, hearts closed. I was a guest in their homes, not a mother. I stopped visiting. I stopped calling as often. I didn't want to be a burden. Didn't want to hear the hesitation in their voices when they said, "Sorry, Mom, we don't have time." The house that had once been full of noise, children laughing, running, fighting, was now nothing but walls and silence. Loneliness became my constant companion. I filled my days with small chores, watering plants, sewing clothes, cleaning cupboards that were already clean. I pretended I was busy, but in truth I was only trying to distract myself from the ache in my heart. At night, I lay in bed and replayed memories. Daniel's first steps, Emma's soft laughter, Grace's endless questions. I remembered the nights I stayed awake by their side when they were sick, the mornings I woke before dawn to prepare their lunches, the sacrifices I made to see them succeed. And then I asked myself, was it all worth it if this is what it led to? Sometimes neighbors ask me, "Margaret, why don't your children visit more often? You raised them so well." I smiled faintly and lied. "They're busy. They love me, but life is demanding." Inside, my heart broke each time I said those words. This was the cruel truth of motherhood that no one tells you. You can give your life to your children, and yet there is no guarantee they will give even a fraction of it back to you. I had given them everything: my youth, my health, my dreams, my life. And now, in my old age, I had nothing but silence. This was the bitter chapter of my story, the chapter where the abandoned wife became the forgotten mother, but I didn't know yet. The hardest part was still to come. The silence in my house grew heavier with every passing year. What once was filled with the sounds of laughter, little feet running across the floor, the clatter of school books, and the warmth of family dinners, had now turned into nothing but echoes. My children had built lives of their own, lives filled with work, partners, children, and endless responsibilities. I wanted to be happy for them, I truly did. And in many ways I was. They had become everything I had dreamed they would be: successful, independent, strong. But in the process, they had forgotten the very hands that carried them through the fire. Holidays came and went. Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, I spent most of them alone. Sometimes they would remember to send a card or call for a few minutes before rushing off to their plans. I would put on a smile, tell them how proud I was, and then hang up the phone with tears streaming down my cheeks. I wasn't asking for much. I didn't need gifts or money or recognition. All I wanted was time, a visit, a hug, a reminder that I still mattered. But it seemed that in their busy, shining new worlds, there was no room left for me. One evening, As I sat alone by the window, I thought about my life. I thought about the years I spent bending my back in factories, scrubbing floors, stitching clothes until my eyes blurred. I thought about the hunger I endured so they could eat, the sleep I sacrificed so they could study, the dreams I buried so theirs could come alive. And I asked myself, what happens to a mother when her children forget her? The answer came like a whisper inside me. She keeps loving anyway, because no matter how forgotten I felt, no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't stop loving them. That's what being a mother means. We love even when love is not returned. But I also realized something else. My story is not unique. There are countless mothers and fathers out there who have given everything, only to find themselves alone in the end. Parents who quietly suffer, never asking for anything, but silently wishing their children would remember them. I was one of them. An abandoned wife, a forgotten mother, a woman who gave her life away so her children could live better and was left behind in the shadows of their success. Today, as I share my story, I do not share it to make you pity me. I share it because I want you to pause, to reflect, and to remember. If you are listening to my story, ask yourself, when was the last time you called your mother? When was the last time you sat with your father, truly listened to them, hugged them without rushing away? We live in a world that tells us to chase dreams, money, and success. But at the end of it all, when the noise fades, the only people who will ever love you unconditionally are the ones who raised you. Don't wait until it's too late to realize that. This was my story, Margaret's story, a story of sacrifice, of love, and of being forgotten. If this touched your heart, I want you to do just one thing. Pick up the phone and call your parents today. Tell them you love them. Visit them, hug them. Remind them that their sacrifices were not in vain. And if you want more stories like mine, real stories of pain, resilience, and truth, then don't forget to follow, share, and support. Because every parent's story deserves to be heard. Every sacrifice deserves to be remembered.